Marcus slowed his truck to a stop on the side of the road. It was quiet, almost eerily so, with the sky just beginning to darken. Up ahead, a beat-up old sedan sat with its hazard lights flashing. He sighed. "Why do I always do this?" he muttered, knowing full well he should just keep driving. But something made him stop. Something about the way the car sat there, lonely and abandoned, tugged at him. Maybe it was the old habit of always helping others, even when he shouldn't. He stepped out of his truck, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, and approached the sedan. The window was half down, and the figure inside hadn't moved. "Hey, you okay in there?" Marcus knocked on the window, but there was no response. Something wasn't right. He leaned closer, peering through the glass. His breath hitched. The driver was slumped forward, unmoving, and then he saw it. Blood, dark and thick, soaking through the man's shirt. Marcus stumbled back, his mind racing. He was staring at a dead man. Earlier that day, Marcus had felt like things were finally turning around. At 33, he'd been the guy whose life was a string of bad luck. Jobs that didn't pan out, relationships that fizzled, and dreams that always seemed out of reach. But that morning, something had changed. At a gas station, he bought a scratch-off lottery ticket and, to his surprise, won $500. It wasn't a fortune, but for someone like Marcus, it felt like hitting the jackpot. He even felt the excitement bubbling in his chest as he thought about Emma. Just last night, she'd said yes to marrying him. He didn't have a ring or anything fancy, but she didn't care. "We'll figure it out," she'd said with a smile. That day, he worked his shift at the factory, his mind wandering to how he'd surprise Emma later. They'd go out for dinner, drink some wine, and talk about their future. It was going to be perfect. But just as he was getting ready at home, his phone rang. It was Emma. "Hey, Marcus." Her voice sounded softer than usual, almost hesitant. "I can't do dinner tonight." He paused, the shirt halfway over his head. "Why not? Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said quickly, but her tone didn't match her words. I need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere?" Marcus's stomach tightened. "Sure. Where?" "How about Maple Street? By the old gas station?" That didn't make sense. Why there? "What's going on, Emma? I'll explain when I see you. Meet me at 7, okay?" Before he could ask anything else, she hung up. Marcus spent the rest of the day pacing, anxiety creeping into his bones. Why did she sound so off? What was she going to tell him, now, as he stood in front of the sedan, staring at the lifeless body inside? Marcus felt his heart hammering in his chest. This wasn't just a broken-down car. This was a murder scene. He fumbled for his phone, ready to call the cops, but stopped. His fingers hovered over the screen. What was he going to say? That he just stumbled upon a dead body in the middle of nowhere? They'd have questions. Questions he didn't have answers for. He wasn't supposed to be here. Before he could think any further, the sound of another car pulling up made his heart jump. He turned to see Emma's car slowly coming to a stop behind his truck. She stepped out, looking calm. Too calm. "Marcus?" she called, walking toward him. "What the hell is going on?" His voice shook as he pointed to the car. "There's a dead guy in there, Emma." Emma glanced at the sedan, her face unreadable. "I know." Marcus blinked. "You know?" "What do you mean, you know?" She walked up to him, her eyes steady. "Marcus, I can explain. But you need to stay calm." Stay calm? How was he supposed to stay calm when there was a dead man in a car right in front of him? "Explain what?" he demanded, his voice rising. "What the hell did you do?" Emma sighed, rubbing her forehead like this was all just some annoying inconvenience. "Look, he's not just some random guy. His name's Rick. I knew him." Marcus shook his head, not understanding. "You knew him?" She nodded. "He was involved with some bad people. I got caught up in it, okay? This wasn't supposed to happen. Caught up in what?" None of this made any sense. Marcus felt like the ground was shifting beneath him, and he didn't know which way was up anymore. "Emma, what are you talking about?" Her voice lowered, and she looked him dead in the eyes. Rick was threatening me, Marcus. He said he'd hurt you if I didn't do what he wanted. I didn't have a choice. His brain was spinning, trying to piece together what she was saying. So what? You killed him? Emma didn't flinch. I had to. He wasn't going to stop. Marcus's stomach churned. He wasn't sure whether to believe her or not, but the dead body in the car was very real. And now, he was a part of this mess. We have to call the cops, he said, his voice shaky. No, Emma said firmly. We can't. They won't understand. They'll think I did it in cold blood. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, looking between her and the car. So what do we do? Emma stepped closer, her voice calm, almost too calm. We get rid of the car. We take it to the lake, sink it. No one will ever find him, and then it's over. Marcus felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. This was insane. He couldn't just make a body disappear. But Emma looked so sure, so determined, and deep down, he knew she was right. If they called the cops, everything would fall apart. His whole life, their future together, it would all be gone. He stared at her for a long moment, searching her eyes for any sign of doubt, but there wasn't any. All right, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Let's do it. They worked quickly, moving Rick's body into the trunk. Marcus's hands shook as they lifted the dead weight, the reality of what they were doing pressing down on him like a boulder. They didn't speak as they drove toward the lake, the silence between them heavy. When they reached the water's edge, Emma backed the car up, her hands steady on the wheel. Marcus stood by, watching as she guided the sedan down the incline, the front wheels dipping into the water first. The car crept forward, the water rising higher until it swallowed the roof and disappeared completely beneath the surface. The lake rippled for a moment, then went still, as if nothing had ever happened. Marcus stood there, staring at the water. His whole body felt numb. Emma walked up beside him, slipping her hand into his. It's over now. Marcus nodded, but the weight of what they'd done sat heavy in his chest. It was over, but it didn't feel like it. He wasn't sure it ever would, but for now, they were free. Or at least, that's what he told himself.